Welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at another gaming console this time around, and we're going to be talking about the Xbox One X and see if this console is still worth it in 2022. Now, I will definitely tell you 100% this console is completely worth it, even though it's, kind of stemming from the Xbox One lineup, and, that lineup came out several years ago. I still think the Xbox One X is completely worth it. I think it's a great console. I think it still has quite a bit of a future ahead of it, and let's just say theoretically that this specific console was completely outdated. Let's say there was no future development, only the games that are available, for the genre of this lineup right now. There's no more future games being added, whatever. This console is still worth it, in my opinion, just as much as like an Xbox 360 is still worth it because of the gaming library that this console has. Now, I will break that down a little bit later in this video. But what I will tell you is that the Xbox One X, still a beautiful console. I think the Xbox One S is better designed, but this thing still looks pretty good. There's really not that much to hate on it either. Now, on the exterior, first of all, this console came out in 2017. So definitely, not the latest of latest consoles, but it's not really that outdated either. I mean, 5 years ago, yes, it's not the newest thing anymore, but you do kind of have to remember that this specific console was coming out at a time where, the PlayStation 4 Pro came out. We had the PS4 Slim and the Xbox One S that were kind of, competing head to head. But this was a few years into this, gaming rivalry. And we kind of knew that the next generation of consoles were coming out sooner than later. We didn't end up getting them until 3 years after this console. So it's not like this console came out and the next one came out right after. It was still a very, long amount of time when the Xbox One X came out and the Xbox Series X and S came out as well. Now, on the outside, we do have a little bit of a different, setup than, the Xbox One, but it still looks very good and almost very similar to the Xbox One S. On the front, we have one USB 3.0 port where we can go ahead and plug in our controller if we want to and charge that controller up. We can charge up other accessories if needed as well. And on the back, we had two USB 3.0 ports, which was awesome. We had an IR blaster, we had a digital audio output, and we had Ethernet as well. But we also had two HDMI ports. Now, a lot of people forget about this thing, and they removed it in the Xbox Series X and S, but this was actually a really cool feature that they added. They gave us the ability of not only outputting, our console from, our Xbox One X to our monitor or TV. That's usually how we would go ahead and do it, but they gave us an HDMI in. Now, what this allowed us to do was it allowed us basically to connect another HDMI ported device, to our Xbox One X, and we can pretty much stream that Xbox One X as a middleman to our TV. So this allowed us to kind of free up an HDMI port on our, TV. If we only had, let's say, one HDMI port, well, we can go ahead and use the Xbox One X and have it stream whatever. So I've seen a lot of people hook up a Nintendo Switch to their Xbox One X, and this allowed them to just use one HDMI port on their TV, but essentially have an extra HDMI port on their, Xbox One X, which would be really cool. And, Microsoft added this, I think, in the original Xbox One too. Easily one of my favorite things about it, and it's a really, really cool thing that they did. Now, that really kind of covers it up on the outside. We obviously have, the power button and everything too. The controller itself as well stemmed from the original Xbox One, and I like the controller. I think it's a great looking controller for the most part. I still have my Xbox One S controller, which is the same thing as this, and it looks really good. I love that controller a lot. I think the Xbox, Series S and X controllers, they probably could have done a little bit more to differentiate them, but it's still a very good looking, controller for this one. It still feels great. My specific controllers still hold a charge pretty well, and they also have battery packs. You can go and add them too. So if you'd rather use AA batteries or something, we have that capability there too, and that is usually the native spot. Now, the selling price of this console when it first released was $499. Nowadays, you can probably get them for around $200 and something and $300 and something, probably even less than that. Whenever there's a lot, whenever there's a bunch of sales going on for the Xbox Series X or S, it's so interesting to see how within like 2 days of the initial sales of the, there's a big release, re-release of the Series S or X's, or there's, some in quantity somewhere. It's so interesting to see how fast, some of the Xbox One X's come up in the market. One X's and One S's go up in the market all the time on eBay and so many other places. So I'd recommend keeping your eyes open on those spots, because there can be a super good deal that you may have missed out on something like an Xbox One X that you can probably get your hands on super easily, in the used market. Now, another big thing to keep in mind with the Xbox One X, and now in 2022, is some of the, amazing capability that is still super relevant in this day and age. Now in this specific console, we have the ability of outputting in 4K just like how we could before, and I think we can even upscale original Xbox One games to 4K as well, which is really, really awesome. And within that, I mean, we had the 8-core CPU on this thing that was at 2.3 gigahertz. We could get up to a terabyte of storage on this thing, but you can also add more, storage on top of that, by just, plugging in your hard drive. We had 12 gigabytes of RAM within this console too. Apparently we had 6 teraflops GPU, whatever that was. And this thing also had the 4K UHD Blu-ray drive within it too. So you could always, play Blu-ray DVDs and all that kind of good stuff with this specific console as well, which kind of doubled its capability, which is really cool. Now, this was the most powerful console of that time in this specific era. It was also apparently the heaviest Xbox One. Shout out to xbox.fandom.com for supplying that information. And, overall, when I look at this console now, we just kind of touched the surface. This console is still very powerful. Maybe it's not as powerful as the Series S or X, but it's not supposed to be. And when I look at the future of the Xbox One X, there are still a lot of games that I think are still going to be ported over and available for this console as well. When I even look at a game like a GTA 6, for example, when that game comes out, probably in the next 2-3 years, probably longer than that, I don't see why that would be specifically tailored for the Series S or the, PlayStation 5. I could see that console, that game going out for this console as well, just because of the power within it. And people have to understand this. The Xbox Series X and S are still hard to get your hands on for the most part. People are still having trouble trying to get their hands on those specific consoles, even with the PlayStation 5 Digital and the Slim. So because of that, these developers are not going to make games with consoles for consoles that nobody has. If more people have their hands on a Xbox Series X or S, then they're definitely probably going to focus their attention more on that. But now that probably most people still own a PlayStation 4, Xbox One, series of one, whichever one, they're definitely going to go ahead and, probably make sure they develop that game. That way it's easily ported over to those other consoles as well. Maybe it won't perform as great on an Xbox One as it will perform on an Xbox Series X, but with an Xbox One X, this kind of assures me that a lot of the games that are going to be coming out in the future are going to be supported with this specific console. This console has still a future ahead of it in my opinion. I don't know how long it is, but I think GTA 6, which is probably the most popular game that's going to be coming out, I think a game like that is probably going to be, available for this console. Is it going to perform the best? I don't know. But considering GTA 5 came out for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, I think this console could probably get some of those types of games as well. So when I look at the future of the Xbox One X, not only are there a ton of overlap between an Xbox Series X and an Xbox One X, but I also think that within probably the next few years, we're probably going to be getting a lot of overlap with a lot of these games coming out. And yeah, we got the Halo that came out specifically tailor made for that newest console, but even that game kind of seemed like, Microsoft could have done a better job. The Halo team could have done a better job, to be honest, from everything that I've heard. But like I mentioned, these game developers know that if they're going to be making a game, they want as many sales numbers as possible. They want those numbers to be as high as possible. So they are probably wanting to go ahead and potentially make that game for not only the latest generation, but the older generation as well. So all in all, in my opinion, the Xbox One X is still a crazy good console. I would still highly recommend purchasing it. Maybe it's not the best console of all time right now, but it's a very good console for sure. And I would still highly recommend you guys to pick it up without a doubt. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.